Well, hey everyone, it's Andy Prisco at Jumpstart Mastery. In June of 2024, Jumpstart Mastery brought together Gary Noesner, founder of the FBI's Crisis Negotiation Unit and lead negotiator at Waco, and Jack Cambria, longest standing commander of NYPD's hostage negotiation team, to engage in a long form educational series of discussions regarding crisis negotiation. And I had the privilege of facilitating that discussion. These conversations invariably lead to curiosity that leaders and managers might have about implementing meaningful crisis negotiation and crisis de-escalation programming in their agency or system. Please do not hesitate, if you have that feeling, to contact us at Jumpstart Mastery by emailing info@jumpstartmastery.com. We would be more than happy to see how we can explore bringing the icons to your leadership team, management team, senior executives to assist you in the ongoing culture change and transformation that our systems so desperately need in supporting people who present discontrol, dysregulation, and crisis. Thank you. Gentlemen, we've been roaming parts of the landscape that altogether are not frequently roamed. We've been deliberately going to parts of the mountain that people, I think, generally stay away from because of, let's say, the complexity or the density of the vegetation. It's not well mapped. Only a few people really know that part of the mountain. And when you have visited, when you've circumnavigated the geography of the negotiation landscape like you two clearly have, there are things that we've been identifying almost in every session that you see no matter where you are on the mountain: the need to upwardly manage, the need to explain, the need to educate others, the need to be assertive when necessary without placing self-interest in the interaction. Something you've touched on a couple of times, both of you in your own way, is the need for the negotiator to be able to manage the fear of failure, their personal expectations that might be in the duty or the responsibility, and then the external pressures that may be placed upon them, ideologically or administratively or in terms of leadership, to get this done. And somewhere to be able to find peace, equanimity in all of it, because the people who seem to know the negotiation truths most intimately are the people who are good at doing it. And to be willing to take the time to explain to someone else who might not have the same insight, particularly if they're in a level of leadership or position above us, why the negotiation wasn't a failure, which means we had to live through and weather this appraisal of a failed negotiation before someone comes to a state of insight or reason about it. A very dear friend and business associate of mine, Tony Blauer, has authored an entire program about understanding fear called Know Fear, KNOW, where in the psychomotor domain, he educates people on understanding and managing the kinesiology of the startle flinch impulse. In the negotiation domain, we're projecting self-control all the time at our best. And that's not just inward facing, that's also outward facing to the person that we're doing business with, as well as our own teams. Let's start here. You're on scene at Waco, you're on scene at some high stakes event. The frequency of events in New York City are probably extraordinary. The eyes are on you all the time. What do you say to an audience that's interested in how did you do it and still feel great about the craft or the discipline or the art? How did you make it to this place where you're at now, where you have great command of the principles? Everybody's got troubles in their life, but you're at a place where you seem to be, at least to me, You're not tormented. You're not on anti-anxietal medication. You're living your lives and you're generally happy, but you're carrying burden, and suffering is in the world. Everyone's got to carry burden. So I'm not here to characterize that there's something wrong with carrying burden, but you've deliberately and willingly stepped into a very uncomfortable place in the negotiator role over and over and over and over again, and you're navigating life rather well today. How did you do that?
Well, I think, not everyone's going to be in a position that Jack was with the largest police department in the world and all the incidents they have, or the unique job that I had, nationally and internationally with the FBI. But I think there are hundreds, if not literally thousands, of negotiators out there who are volunteers. They're all volunteers.
Right.
Nobody gets, conscripted into doing this. They're pursuing a specialty that becomes a calling. They want to be lifesavers and get people out alive of a situation. Knowing the great satisfaction and fulfillment that comes from that, also being aware of the fact that they don't all have the ending we want, and you've got to shoulder the burdens of the disappointing outcome.
Yep.
But the attributes that we see in these people, genuineness, sincerity, integrity, honesty, you could almost recite the Boy Scout code, and most importantly, I've found for negotiators is plain old all-American likability. You're a likable person,
Yeah.
and you like people,
Yeah.
and you want to help people, and you want to make a difference. These are the things that make so many negotiators become lifelong students of the game. The biggest failure I've seen, and we talked about this off camera, that is an impediment to effective negotiations is when people try to be something they're not.
Yep.
And now they take on a persona or an approach that's not natural and doesn't come across as natural and sincere and genuine. And I think this comes from a fear of failure,
Yep.
that the consequences are significant here. I mean, I'm talking to some guy that's holding 2 children, and their life is potentially in my hands. And first of all, that puts too much burden on you individually. You're working as a group, a team, an organization. But I've never had that fear of failure. I've always wanted to be put in the game because I'm confident, and I know Jack is, and other good negotiators. I know the one thing I can count on is that I'm going to give this my level best. I'm going to put all of my energy, all of my abilities, all of my experience, all of my insights, all the things I've learned from other people to try to save these lives. If they don't come out alive, it sure isn't for lack of trying on my part.
You nail something that Tony even leverages when we look at victims of violent crime. There is more resilience among people who fought back, even if they lost. They're able to accept the trauma more than if they were just so terrified that they didn't do anything.
He
has a way of saying that that's more efficient than I
It's Teddy
just did.
Roosevelt's famous poem about
About the arena.
the man in the arena.
Yeah.
And there's going to be challenging times that you face in a very challenging job.
Yeah.
But still, you get up, you dust yourself off, you're
willing
deal
to
with
go
the
back.
criticism or the uninformed people who criticize you without having a base of knowledge to do so.
Right.
And you go about the task of supporting your team, working together, learning constantly, changing, adapting, and saving lives. I don't know, no one has a figure of how many lives have been saved by hostage crisis negotiators in the United States and abroad. I think the number's in the tens of thousands. I mean, it's an enormous number.
Right.
And it's unheralded because when we typically resolve a situation peacefully, what you are most likely going to hear from, say, even other police officials is, it must not have been too hard. That guy didn't probably really want to hurt himself or anybody else.
Right.
And it sort of, I think, very unfairly diminishes.
Terribly
task.
diminishes it.
Sometimes effective negotiation is just avoiding doing something stupid and wrong. It's not that you had this brilliant epiphany about, I'm going to throw this line out and this guy's going to bite this hook and he's going to come out and surrender. just don't screw it up. Stay in there for the test of time and consistently demonstrate no matter what mistakes I make, I'm going to be seen by this person as someone who is genuinely trying to help them out of this situation.
So, what are the attributes then? What are the attributes of the negotiator that you think they naturally bring to the craft if they're in it for an extended period of time? Is it resilience? Is it a thick skin? Is it a strong constitution?
Well, I think Gary touched on it beautifully when he used the word confidence.
Yep.
When you go into a situation with an air of confidence, those around you can't help but to be affected by that.
It's contagious. Confidence is contagious. Courage is contagious.
So if you know your craft, you've done this before, it's not your first rodeo, then the executives that are at the scene who are supervising this incident, they have then that air of confidence in you, especially if they know you over a period of time. I like to say, because the concept of hostage negotiation started in the NYPD, so I like to say we probably got it wrong more than anybody else because we've been doing it longer than everybody else.
Right.
But by getting it wrong more than everybody else, now we probably get it right more than everybody else because we learn from our past mistakes.
Yep, that's
Maybe
fair.
we shouldn't do that again.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we just get stronger as a team. And so there's that corporate, knowledge.
Yeah, the
that
group.
that we get along with. A loose definition of success is lack of failure. If you're not failing at the moment, then you must be succeeding, right? Is at least the implication of that. But if you do fail, then it's important to dissect that. Why did you fail? If you failed, it might be something that you had no part of. Suicidal cases we've been speaking about a lot. That subject, the individual, made a decision, and despite our very best efforts, like the surgeon going into an operating room, all their training into that, getting that patient to survive, and they die anyway in the operating room.
And there's an affect that sometimes a physician can have. In my domain, I like to use that word if the audience hasn't figured that out. In my area of operation, there are clinicians, there are providers that have an air of distance. And I think sometimes that distance is a consequence of the discomfort that can come from witnessing undesirable outcomes to a great degree of frequency. Our dear friend in Utah, Mark Lothar, who's, I'm not talking out of school, this person has lived through more than one suicide intervention where the person took their life in front of him. Somewhere he internalized knowing that he could carry that as the last person that witnessed them in their authenticity. They trusted him to witness that. And he has had to carry that extraordinary burden. And he's done some job turning that into gold, helping other people. There's something that happens when you're in this line of work where our willingness to be present in someone else's suffering sets the stage for a sharing of it that I don't think, unless you have gone through that experience, people can understand, even in the academic sense.
But you have to be careful not to take on ownership and be responsible for things that are beyond your control. As I mentioned, earlier, I might mention it even in the series here. I believe in the serenity prayer, not in a religious context, but in the appreciation as a negotiator. I know there are things I can change or influence.
Yeah, I accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change.
And I know the things that I cannot.
Yep.
And I understand the difference. To me, that is what has freed me to be effective as a negotiator throughout my career.
Hear, hear, Gary.
And I try to relay this to negotiators, particularly dealing with suicides, because if you do enough of them, somebody's going to kill themselves, regardless of how well you did. It's just the statistics.
Right.
It's still low, but you're going to lose one. You run.
That's the math.
That's the math. And you have to be able to, when that happens, not assume that responsibility, which sadly so many negotiators have, and it's torn some of them up. I know negotiators are impacted by a suicide that happened 30 years ago.
Yep.
And it's not their fault.
Right.
So I get that confidence that Jack just mentioned, and I know he gets it too, from knowing when I'm here now, I'm giving it my all. I'm leaving nothing in the field house. I'm bringing it out to the field.
I'm laying it out on the field.
I'm playing it out in the field. There'll be nothing left that I didn't put into it when I got here. And the outcome is the outcome. If I lose the game, It's not because I
It
didn't.
makes acceptance easier. And what I think is so interesting is that while on its face, when life and death are the stakes, people, in my view, become willing to leave it all on the field. But when conditions are less than that, barricaded person that isn't about to take their own life or doesn't have a victim, it seems easier to not leave it all on the field. And I think that, in fact, when we deliver training very often, one of the anecdotal things that I'll say is nobody, even TV often, gets it right. In the negotiation, life or stakes negotiation game, no one seems to be, generally speaking, at odds with not wanting to influence this in a negative way. So we're going to be as non-offensive as possible to engender a relationship of trust. But when the circumstances are less than that, people seem more willing to put themselves 1 minute into that space where well, and in that space, that was a life or death circumstance where he still said 1 minute. But the point is, people are willing to be less than fully invested in these ideas when the stakes aren't life and death, which I think is tragic because at its best, these skills, this way of being is the most thoughtful, sensitive, empowering way one can be with another human being. A person can be with another human being at any time.
You know, I wish I practiced this in every moment of my life.
Right.
My wife reminds me that I do not. But I have the ability, as I know Jack does. It's game time.
Right.
You know, this is life and death. Now I've got to focus all my energy and all my resources on working with my collective team to make sure we are doing everything humanly possible to resolve this peacefully.
Yes.
There may be circumstances where, because of the behavior of the other person, the perpetrator, the crisis person, whatever, that now we're going to support our tactical brothers and sisters to make sure that they're not unnecessarily jeopardizing their life. And, you know, so you have to be secure enough to know that if things don't go the way I hope, number one, it's not my fault. Number two, it's not a failure.
Yes.
You may have heard me before. I have often heard on-scene commanders say, negotiations failed, so we had to take tactical action. And it just drives me up a wall because negotiations never fails. Never fails. We don't always achieve the peaceful surrender we want, but we're buying time. We're putting a lid on a very volatile, very dangerous situation. We're making a sincere and genuine effort to help somebody out of a crisis. That's worth our time and energy and our effort. It's absolutely worth it. And we always are successful in presenting that. And the most important thing I would say to people is, guess what, Scooter? You're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't care if you got the team helping coach you, and you got information on the situation board. When you're in the hot seat, on the phone, talking around the corner up past the barricade, like Jack's had to do so many times, when you listen back to the dialogue, you will say, could have done that a little better.
Yes.
Oh, gee, I kind of missed this point that this person said that might have been a real helpful thing for me to respond to more effectively. None of that matters. What matters is, how does a neutral observer view Jack's effort to get this guy to come off of the tower?
Yes.
And the neutral observer is going to say, man, he got out there. He did everything he could.
Yeah. That was
He
the most
tried to
thoughtful effort I ever
He
saw.
tried to help that guy. You know, maybe he could have articulated that better, but this guy knows that this man was trying to save his life.
Yep.
Now, if you know this and accept the fact you will make mistakes, if you will accept the fact that you don't always control the outcome, it frees you up to be more natural and organic.
Yeah.
And come across as you would if your best friend from across the country was in a crisis and called you up, and you would devote your full energy and attention to try to help them deal with whatever they're dealing with.
Yep.
If you can do that with a complete stranger, you are going to be a successful negotiator.
Yeah.
There's the guardian of the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah. Kevin, our friend
Mhm.
Kevin.
Kevin Biggs, retired negotiator now. His job, he was a California Highway Patrol officer, and his post was the Golden Gate Bridge. And mostly on his motorcycle, mostly what he would do would respond to vehicle accidents and take reports and things like that, get tow trucks. but he was also a trained negotiator. And there's a famous picture of him where he's negotiating with an individual for 4 hours
Yes.
over the edge of the girder of the bridge, and he successfully negotiates him back onto the roadway. So as they're getting the ambulance and getting him to the ambulance, Kevin Biggs says to this gentleman, "Because I have to ask you, why didn't you jump?" And the response was, "Because you just wouldn't give up on me."
How about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
How about that?
Powerful,
Yeah.
powerful.
He's on a speaking tour with that guy,
Yeah,
Kevin.
yeah,
Yeah.
he is. I see that.
But that shows you the level of sacrifice. And again, I go back to nobody forces anybody in this position. This is volunteer stuff. Some people say, I don't want anything to do with this. You know, if I screw this up and somebody gets killed, psychologically, I'm going to damage myself. But most negotiators I know, they want to be that one talking. They want to be the one trying to save a life.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know,
I would agree. I would agree
yeah, and
wholeheartedly.
it's good stuff. But again, embrace a healthy dose of humility that recognizes you can't be all things to all people.
Right.
You
Even the win is not all you.
exactly.
You know?
And the failure is not all you.
Right.
And the important thing though is that you're that man in the arena.
Yep.
That you gave it your all.
Yep.
And there will always be critics or people that don't understand
That you're willing.
or will characterize wrongly something you did as well. That failed. That negotiated. He wasn't able to get him out. You know, very insensitive and very inaccurate, probably 100% of the time. But you know, when you put your head on that pillow at night, as you said, I gave it my all.
Yep.
My team gave it all.
Yeah.
And that's just it. It's a team effort. So if the first negotiator up is not able to get it resolved, then that's where the team leader comes in and they may replace the negotiator. And finally, the lion's share of the credit goes to the final negotiator who negotiates that individual out. But there's a great quote that it's not the final stroke of the artist, I'm sorry, let me tell it again.
The brush.
No, it's not the final stroke of the sculptor's chisel that makes the masterpiece, but rather all that came before it.
Yeah.
So it's that process. So the first negotiator got us from point A to point B, and the final negotiator got us from point B to completion.
Yeah. So again, we're coming back to that theme that these skills, our approach, our willingness, our resilience, this is all part of a larger, more complex response system or group or program to these kinds of events. And even if it's you and just someone else in a patrol car and your incident action plan is scribbled out on the back of a form on a pencil, with pencil, that's still something that either both of them are going to intervene in, but the entire system that supported them being there in that capacity and the after action are also part of the totality of the response. It's not just the two people there, especially if it's in a public safety context, because we have agencies, as you know, that to some degree make crisis negotiation training required for instance, in our state, this lovely state that we're sitting in right now in Washington. Every year, every police officer in our state under statute must get 8 hours of crisis intervention training.
That's great.
And in many cases, the jurisdictions push the 40-hour training. It's an awareness training. It's not all competencies. It's familiarity with our mental health system, the way to set up referrals, etc. But it's an immersion experience into a training.
Every FBI
discipline.
agent that goes to the academy today gets taught the active listening skills that we started using
There
as
you go.
negotiators
There you go.
back in 1990. It's I've always said negotiations is the most noble of law enforcement endeavors because it's volunteer. People want to do it. They want to help. They want to save lives. And what can you say negatively about that? And it's just those who watch this series and who are getting their training or they've been doing it for a while, become a lifelong student of the game. Practice it, use it.
Who coined that phrase that you had said? Who said?
Steve Romano.
Steve Romano. He by the way, he's been watching our behind the scenes clips.
He's great.
On LinkedIn.
He's terrific.
Yeah.
He's terrific. He became the chief of the crisis negotiation unit after I did, and we're very close friends. But yeah, and I think he's absolutely right. If you ever get to a point, and this is true of any profession really, where you say, well, I've learned it all. I know it all,
Right.
then, you're shortcutting yourself.
Yep.
There's always somebody, and I've always told students, get the training. I'm just saying, get the FBI training and call it a day. No, train from anyone out there who's offering you training that you can get from.
Yep.
Everybody's got some good stuff. You like this from him, I like that from her. Piece it
Be a
together,
student of the game.
but be a student of the game. Study past incidents. Jack mentioned earlier, NYPD learned through error. Well, so did we in the FBI.
Right.
And so did most of this discipline.
Yep.
We learned as much through, oops, we better not do that again,
Right.
or let's not put on mama unless we really know what this relationship is. These are trial and error kind of things. Now we've studied them, we've codified them, we've set them out in policy warnings and so forth and so on. But you've got to put time and effort into that. And every one of these negotiation conferences around the country, they're always doing case studies. There's some new incident that happened somewhere.
Yeah.
Listen to the debrief. Listen to the problems they encountered. You're always going to hear something very unique, some new challenge, and you got to get a new idea. Look how they handled that. That was interesting. That's a good idea. I think I'll do that again.
Yeah. Yeah. Gary, you had something to say. It's worth mentioning it in this segment regarding the comparison of firearms training to negotiation training. Do you remember what it was that you had said?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the actual numbers, but in law enforcement across, the range of all agencies, if you compare the amount of firearms training, and I'm not criticizing, it's an absolutely life and
Right.
death essential skill. It wouldn't take a moment's training away from anybody.
Right.
But if you compare that to the amount of training devoted to communication skills,
Yeah.
you would see
Yeah.
a massive disparity.
Yeah.
Yet, what are the tools that police officers use more than anything else?
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah, they use the tool of their ability to communicate.
Yeah.
And we've all worked with good police officers. When I was a young FBI agent, I was on a fugitive squad, and I worked with two older agents. And one of these guys had this ability to piss off almost anybody. And, here I am with my J.C. Penney suits, and there are only like two of them or three of them.
Yeah.
And I'm finding out once a week we're rolling in the dirt fighting some guy because he mishandled it
Yep.
when we're arresting this guy. Then I worked with a big, strong guy, Jimmy Calhoun, who became a dear friend of mine. And he was a football player for Florida State University, but he used his brain.
Yeah.
I very rarely got into physical altercations with him because he knew how to talk to people.
Yes.
And as a young agent, I'm saying, I think I'm knowing which one of these models I'm going to try to replicate
Yeah.
in the way I do business.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that's important. A lot of people are drawn to law enforcement. It's authority. It's rank. We can, exercise that authority when people are being bad, but we have to be careful not to move in that direction too quickly.
Yes. Yeah. Gary, this discussion in my mind is a perfect opportunity to, maybe you've shared it with others, but I think our audience would be delighted with something that you've taken the time to put together, and you call it the Negotiators Pledge. And
Yes.
I'm hoping that you'll share that here because I've always wanted, when you're a firefighter, there's a pledge that you take. When you're an EMT, there's a pledge that you take. When you undertake certain technical rescue disciplines, there's a pledge that you take.
Yeah.
Please.
There's never been one in my view for the work of crisis de-escalation, crisis intervention, and the fact that you wrote one, I think, is so meaningful. I was hoping you'd share that.
Well, I did this about 20 years ago to kind of address the points that we've just previously discussed about not taking too much responsibility for things that are beyond your control.
Yeah.
To knowing you will give a good effort, but there are limitations to what you can do.
Mhm.
So I call this the Crisis Negotiators Pledge. And it says, I do not create the crisis situations to which I respond. Yet I will do everything within my power to achieve a safe and peaceful resolution. My primary objective is to prevent loss of life. I cannot control the actions of the perpetrator, the individual in crisis, or others, but I will remain diligent and steadfast in pursuing my objective. To the best of my ability, my words and my actions will be in furtherance of this goal.
Oh, gosh.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Friends, I hope that you've enjoyed this time that we've wanted to share with you. We've navigated some complex landscape, some sides of the mountain that people don't like to generally talk about because they haven't been there, and you can't fake the kind of experience and um, suffering that Gary and Jack have had to carry in the course of advancing and furthering the art and science of crisis negotiation, crisis communication. There are going to be opportunities after this learning series that we hope that you'll consume in its entirety to engage with the group of the icons of influence for your agency training needs, for your agency education and awareness needs, for your executive team's enrichment needs. We want you to stay in touch with us at the Icons of Influence at Jumpstart Mastery. And Jack and Gary are absolutely willing to make themselves available for you to or your team to lean deeply into these principles in a meaningful learning way that's not traditional training. This kind of education is really masterclass level. We're not, while it's certainly valuable to the new negotiator and to someone new to the domain or not even from the domain, I think what you'll notice is that the levels of sophistication of these topics are very helpful to people who are in leadership of their programs of negotiation or intervention, very helpful to administrators who are trying to become more familiar with operations of their care or custody or public safety system. And the kind of experience that's been revealed here in this series is more than capable of enriching and meeting your learning needs and training needs for your agency. So we hope that you'll stay with us and be with this group as we continue to layer more and more services and products to this initial offering. Thank you so much for joining us at the Icons of Influence here with Gary Noesner and Jack Cambria. And I'm Andy Prisco. I've been your host. It's been my pleasure to serve you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.